For those of you that haven't been here before, it's a co-creation space, obviously here in San Francisco in the Presidio, first of its kind. It's an invitation only, so we welcome you to come to edgeandnode.com and click on the House of Web3 tab and fill out an invitation. If you're in Web3 and working in Web3, we would love to have you as a co-creator. We're really excited about this evening, uniting the Web3 Innovators Fireside Chat of Crypto Careers. We have the head of BD and Partnerships, Kyle Rojas, right here. Did I say that right? Yeah, okay. And our Chief Business Officer, Tegan Kline, coming to chat with you. And we welcome any questions this evening too. We really want you all to get involved. And so we're really excited to have just like a deep discussion about what it's like to have a career here in Web3. So I welcome you. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. How's it going? Welcome to the house. Amazing. Well, we're super excited to chat today. So we're going to keep this casual. We're going to keep it fun. We're going to keep it light. We want to hear from you guys. So make sure to capture all of your questions because we will be asking throughout and at the end. And so with that, Kyle, why don't you tell everyone your crypto red pill story?
Crypto red pill story. So my buddy, a childhood friend, and we grew up crazy kids. I grew up a really crazy kid. And we separated for a long time, but he was my really, really good friend. And he turned out to be this deep, deep black hat hacker when I met him as an adult. And I was just, going through my MBA, and I was like, dude, what the fuck are you doing with your life? What's going on? And even though I had heard about the Web3 ecosystem in general, obviously with, at that time it was 2014, so paid attention to Bitcoin, I didn't realize and wasn't really paying attention to the importance of it. And he kept putting the bug in my ear. And after my MBA, I went to Wall Street Bank, and I drank the Kool-Aid, and I just thought it was something that was really a fad. And I think it was just because I was so institutionalized. I was military first, and then I went to Goldman, and I kind of just believed what I was told at the time. And then in 2016, I started, probably like most people, is just getting involved in Bitcoin and ETH as more of a volatility trader, and nothing kind of makes you pay attention like skin in the game. But then that's when I really, probably late 2016, early 2017, I really started diving in. And then once DeFi became a thing, I was a very early DeFi dude. And that's when because I've always been an economics incentives nerd. Once I realized that you can tweak incentives and therefore tweak behavior and extrapolate from that, therefore change human behavior in general, I just kind of ate it up. And I couldn't unsee it once I saw it. And then from that point on, while at Goldman, I lost my heart for Wall Street, and everything I saw, every person I talked to, I just realized I didn't want to be that. So the more
lost your heart, or they cut it out of you?
Both. Yeah, no comment. But it grew back, and and now and then it was finally after years of being this total, I would say, degen in the most endearing way, meaning I just loved testing tech. I loved meeting people. And then it was heavily, but I don't have as much time. I still love being a non-participant in Discords and Telegrams. I literally changed my profile to go still be a non-participant. And the community I found and the way people think about things, it's not money driven when you're actually in Discords, when you're in communities. And that's what I fell in love with. And once you do that, it's hard to go back. So then I ended up, I got the kitchen pass to quit Goldman and finally dive in head first. So that's kind of the long-winded story.
Amazing. Yeah, Kyle during the interview told me that his degen score, and that was actually very impressive. So Kyle, I guess, what are some of your tips for interviewing maybe for a similar role on the business side that you would have for someone who wants to break into crypto and Web3?
I'd say regardless of which community you're in and which job you're in, let's say, and whatever you want to do in the ecosystem, being involved, especially being involved for years and having that context and being able to say, all right, I saw this because I participated in it. I've done this, I don't like it because I participated in it. I was in these communities, even as a non-participant, and you know the stories and you have the context. That is better than any degree. That is better than, I'd say, any network. Being inside and actually participating in the ecosystem is something I'll hire. I think we'll hire over any degree, over any personality, over any capability, because um, the education you get, the degree you get, and just experience through Web3 is impossible to overcome. So for tips, I'd say for anyone watching or anything like that, like get heavily involved. I was doing this for many years before I even like thought I could actually go do it for a career. And then that enabled me, one, to meet you. We were in chats together way back when. And so it increased my network because I actually knew some of these folks. I, participated in some of the early rounds as a friend, and then I got more serious about it, and that was invaluable to be able to go talk to different people, whether it was I was looking at exchanges and funds, and I realized I didn't want to do that thing anymore, and I chose the harder challenge and the bigger challenge. So yeah, it's nothing's more important than like being in the industry, even as a community member that no one knows for years. I'd say that's the biggest thing. And then meeting every single person you can, and then helping them, not just trying to get something for yourself. That's always been my personality, I guess. But yeah.
Yeah, and reflecting back on that moment, I think Meltem Demiris connected us, who was a good friend of mine. She was an early supporter of the Graph ecosystem, and then you were in BTC Nation, which is like the top Telegram group that there is.
Oh, geez, yeah.
So I think that having those data points just from being in the ecosystem and meeting people and people kind of double clicking into you and recommending you, I think really helps. So maybe that's some tips. And Edgenode, we're hiring for 2 roles for business development, among many other roles. But what would you say, what advice would you have to maybe someone who wants to break into that BD role?
Yeah, I think the Graph ecosystem has high hurdles because it's a very complex and elegant technology. And because of that, you can't just come in and have a sales background and then come try to sell to literally some of the brightest developers in the space. So what we're looking for, and what's been lacking sometimes, is knowledge of the graph, like knowing what it is, why it's here, what it's doing, what the mission is, knowing about the history of the technology, who founded it and why, knowing the dynamics of the technology. Because in BD, it's a dev tool, right? So you're selling to developers and very often very skeptical founders. Then how do you talk to people like that if you don't know what the graph is? And naturally, I guess we talk a lot in podcasts and speaking, so you have to explain to normies. But more importantly, for the BD role, you have to be able to tell it to a founder of any DeFi, DAO, NFT, data analytics platform in general, every vertical, because it's truly a ubiquitous piece of the stack. So that's what people need. They need, and even more importantly than that, if somebody's been in the ecosystem for a while and they've contributed without asking for something, that's, I think, something we look for just as much as anything else. It's like, I told someone else tonight, it's like, we need anti-profit maxis that believe in the mission of it and want to come in to like change the world and be challenged. Because I think working on the graph is really a gift, because in BD, you get to work with every single founder of every single DApp of any type and pretty much every single chain. And I get to know them, and that's a gift. So we have to have high hurdles. I'd say those are the few things. And then just checking yourself in the graph ecosystem, checking yourself of, coming in with integrity. But I don't think that's abnormal for any gig, though some people overlook that just for capabilities, and I don't think we'll ever do that.
Totally. Yeah. Culture is super important. And I guess with that, you came from Goldman, you had a military background. How did you decide business development was it for you and not something else?
So in military, I did a bunch of different things. And I was in 12 years. I started out working on fighter jets. and then I worked on other jets, and then I, did some side jobs, and then I had like a political position, and then I was like heavy in the intelligence world, which is a lot of fun. But then I chose family over a really good military career, very good military career, and had no idea what I wanted to do. So I just honestly chose the hardest challenge, which I looked at like PhDs and law degrees, but my wife and I, she was military too, coming from an enlisted background, both of us coming from very lower income households. We didn't really have money. So I chose an MBA because it was a chance to explore something and not be locked in if I were a lawyer or a doctor or something like that or whatever. So I just chose something that had the most, not upside, but the most possibility of a really big challenge. And then when I did my internship in my MBA, I got a really good job offer in oil and gas. But I went through the simulation. I was bored to death because I could imagine 20, 30 years. I could just map out exactly what I was going to do, and I hated it. So I got rid of that offer, and I chose Goldman because it was entrepreneurial, meaning they brought you in, you kind of had partner responsibility from day one, and you either sink or swim. And I just liked that because it was hard. And then once I'd kind of conquered that, I was in almost 7 years, so I did fairly well, and I got really bored, and I realized that I've always been a people person and a people pleaser, which I think is really important in BD and partnerships, because I always want to make sure people get something out of any conversation that I have with them, and that makes me happy. So I think that's probably the personality trait I realized that would make me good in this type of role. And then I got bored at Goldman, and then finally I got the guts to try something that from there was like I'd say economically it was like a step down, but that wasn't what I was after. I was after just an extremely hard challenge, and I chose to work on the graph because it is truly one of the most difficult problems the ecosystem is facing. And then, of course, the gift of getting to meet everyone. And I didn't realize it at the time, or I didn't realize the extent of it at the time. But it's just it's so difficult. And then thankfully those skills helped me, but also the curiosity of just me being a total degen for so many years made me super interested, degen in a good way, super interested in the technology because it's such a hard technology, and I knew a lot about it. But then when I came in, I was like, holy shit, I know nothing. And now being able to like be around some of the brightest minds just on the ecosystem teams alone, like Sam at Semiotic, and like all the engineers building at Edge Node, and Masari and what they're doing with data, and GraphOps and everyone else. It's everything that I kind of went through in my life, just a chip on my shoulder for being like a lower income kid, and then all the stuff I had to go through in my life just kind of, I think it kind of led me here. So the moment was when I realized that I enjoy giving to people more than I enjoy getting from people, and that was probably what has made me most successful in the BDM partnerships.
Amazing. Yeah, I want to talk about Web3 and the graph in a minute. But before we do, I think a lot of people here, at least a handful that I've spoken to, are interested in breaking into the industry. How do you decide, kind of speaking of sinking or swimming, how do you decide a startup versus a larger company that's maybe a little bit more structured?
I think even large companies are fairly chaotic. And I guess what I did was, because I got some really good offers from exchanges and funds, and even a couple protocols, one chain. And I guess looking through there, I would have been selling to very wealthy people and making wealthy people more money if I had gone to an exchange or a fund. I didn't want that. So I tried on that emotional hat simulation, and I was like, F that. And then when I went to, because I've been like a cross-chain participant for a long time, when I got an offer from a chain, I was like, do I want to just be in one chain? Do I want to incentivize myself to be tribalistic? I tried that hat on, and I set it apart. And then I went to kind of the protocol world, and thankfully I had a few different offers. And I guess I just tried on all these different hats and saw who I wanted to be. And then I was lucky enough to get an opportunity to work here, and that was one of the best decisions I've made in a long time. But I tried on and like went through the stomach wrenching decision of where I should go, and I chose this. That's a very set ecosystem because I'm super risk averse because of my upbringing, and I never want to kind of go back there. My wife doesn't either. So I chose something with like product market fit, with amazing teams, with awesome leadership. At least that was the initial decision, until I really started to kind of learn the why of what Univ, why Univ is doing this, and then like why you do things, and then that was just like I can't not do this. So that's why I chose this team. But it's trying on the different emotional hats, going through the simulations, and seeing what you want to be. Do you want to be a suit? Do you want to be, a potentially failed founder or a potentially failed early startup, which I think is really freaking cool? I'm not able to do that. I got kids and a wife, and I wouldn't do that. So I chose the route because of who I wanted to be, what I was able to learn, and then the challenges I was able to take on.
And what was that why for you?
The why of why I joined this team?
Yeah.
It was your and Univ's why.
What is that?
Oh, okay. Because you're not doing this for money. Yaniv he's set, and he can't stop doing things. And then the why of the graph, obviously it's cool technology, it's found product market fit, a lot of cool people working on it. But the why of it, and it could be a very different why. Like this team could be one of the biggest SaaS companies in the crypto. It would be the biggest SaaS company in crypto right now. And because you chose the route to kind of enrich the world and change the incentive structure and still do that, that was the why, where I was like, I have to. You could have given me a lot less. I would have come over to the team. But it's like, and I made the decision once I started reading what you all wrote, seeing what you spoke, and then like verifying with you and Univ, and then meeting other teams, other members of the team. And now it's like, why is all that matters to me in all my life. I'm really like, why is what matters to me. Why I am a good dad and a good husband and a good friend, because that's the why. And so that you taught me a lot there. It's like why means everything. So that's cool. Thank you for that.
I love that. No, I'm super grateful. Aww. And let's talk a little bit about Web3 because it gets thrown around a lot. What is your definition of Web3?
It's hard to define. For me, Web3, without getting technical at all, Web3 is and again, as a like economics incentives nerd, I guess, economics is essentially incentives. Web3 is the disruption of messed up incentives that will always end up to shitty behavior and control and manipulation and personal enrichment. And Web3 is, for the first time in human history, I think, the ability to truly change the incentives to get away from the inevitable water trickling down the easiest route to when somebody has an incentive to do something, they're going to do it. If they can get rich, they're going to do it. When you have control, you're going to keep it. You're going to gain more. That's the same thing for companies, which are essentially organisms now because they don't die. They could just keep going and amass more power throughout even many generations. And so Web3 is the disruption of grossly misaligned incentives and the ability to change the incentives and therefore like truly change human behavior. Because if all this works, the world probably will end up in a much different place. And I think humans will benefit because of it. And a much larger share of human species in general will benefit because of it for so many reasons. So that's like what Web3 is to me. It's the changing of incentive structures, and therefore truly changing the trajectory of how humans will behave, and therefore the trajectory of kind of human future in general. How would you describe it?
Well, I would say web3 is a brand new platform for truly decentralized applications, but that's much more technical and less heart-centered than yours. And I really appreciated the way you framed it. And it really is a paradigm shift. It's about giving power, control, ownership back to individuals. Like you said, power does corrupt, and it's sad, and it either corrupts the individual, the company from inside, or an external force will corrupt it if you have that power. And so it's really about removing that power, especially from the infrastructure when it comes to the graph, so that we can distribute that power back to individuals.
And there's decentralization is right now a means to an end. It's just the really only way to ensure that. Because if there's points of centralization, you're going to have the same end. And that's exciting that now we get to like tool around and work on that and like see it to fruition, and it's working. The technology is working better than I think a lot of everyone kind of hypothesized. It was an experiment, something brand new that never existed. But the technology is outperforming centralized technology, and it's doing that. It has unbeatable uptime because of decentralization, and that's just one technology. So I think decentralization is necessary. So yeah, new platform for decentralized applications, but what does that lead to? Yeah.
Totally. Amazing. And I guess with that, how does the graph fit into Web3? And then can you also explain the difference between edge and node and the graph?
Sure. Whenever somebody, wait, raise your hand. Are you working in Web3? Raise your hand if you are. All right, so a good amount. Some are not. So whenever somebody needs to build anything in Web3 ecosystem, they choose 3 different things as their stack. They choose what blockchain or blockchains they build on. They choose which oracle they're going to use if they're going to need on-chain data to put on-chain. And they have to figure a way to sift through the insane amount of completely unidentifiable, just by hexadecimal hash, information sitting on blockchains and filter it in their UI. And so if you think of oracles as the write layer, blockchains as the recording layer, the graph is that read layer that organizes, and then makes that data usable in 100 milliseconds, which is indiscernible from instantaneous. So it is an essential part of the stack. It is chain, vertical, person agnostic, that is essential to build. And it's amazing what has happened with the graph, because a massive amount of the Web3 space uses it. And that's fun because we get to know a little bit about everyone. We get to know a lot about everyone, but even more than that, we not just get to know them, we get to provide something we get to help provide something, working on the technology that is essential for them to build the next killer dApp, which is essential for Web3 to even like survive. It wouldn't work. It wouldn't scale. And that's so that's where the graph sits. And then the graph was founded in 2017 by Yaniv, Brandon, and Giannis. And then in December 2020, there was the token generation event where GRT came out, which is the work utility token. And at that point, the Graph Foundation was created and Edge and Node was created. Edge and Node concentrates on product, on tech support. Graph Foundation concentrates on community, even though we're separate entities, we're all working closely on the same mission. Now there are 6 core devs working on the ecosystem, including Semiotic, all doing really amazing things. So Edge and Node now is just one of 6 core devs, and that's only in a couple years. So imagine in 10 years, how many people, I don't know if it'll even be core devs. It could just be that the core dev ecosystem subtracted away because token economics, incentives and disincentives with the work utility token create this ecosystem where the world is running this public good that is sustainable. And that remains to be seen, but that's a really freaking cool challenge because it's tough.
Totally. And why do we need decentralized data? Why can't we just trust Google to serve us our data?
I need a drink for this one. When I go to somebody's newspaper page online and I see an author's name written at the bottom, there's no way for me to know if that person actually wrote it. When I go to Twitter and I see Elon Musk with his blue check mark and I see him tweet something, there's no way for me to personally verify that he tweeted that. It's the idea of trust. We have to trust. We are forced to trust. And we are consistently and will always be taken advantage of because of that. And I think anyone who thinks that corporations and governments and in general should be trusted to give you whatever information they think is in your best interest and to be totally honest is completely off the mark. I work for the government. I worked on Wall Street. And my wife works in oil and gas. Corporations' incentive is to tell the best story, and things like Google will do the same thing because the incentive is there. We wish we had transparency, in leading up to the financial crisis. We had to trust and Enron and their auditors and every other thing that's siloed. So anything that is centralized and controlled by a certain small amount of people that isn't auditable, and in open data, it's auditable 24/7, 365, you can't trust it and we will be abused. But not only that, think of what open data does, and this is what's so exciting to me about the graph, and I see it all the time. The ability in open source, that's why I love the web3 ecosystem in general. It's open source, so you don't build in a silo. Everyone can just fork it, make it better, and that adds to the whole, which speeds up innovation, which will lead to a more efficient and faster increase in quality of life, in communication, in everything, right? Once we were able to just communicate across the world, think how fast we were able to advance in science and art and everything. And that was when everything was controlled. And now it might have taken the railroads hundreds of years because it was a few corporations doing it. It took the internet, traditional internet, many decades. And now in 10 years, we're growing such a fast ecosystem. And then if we keep this open source tradition and enable people to just build on top immediately, permissionless, unblocked, the potential, I think, is very limitless, even though we also need to worry about what things are going to happen with open source AI and what people are going to do with crypto technology. And so that's fun because now we get, I'm just a small part of like the product and all that stuff, but now we get to think through, how do you disincentivize that behavior? I mean, we don't know yet. How do you truly disincentivize that behavior so you could subtract yourself and people won't do the shitty thing? We have no idea. But that's why, so it's the pace of innovation, being able to truly trust and therefore not have to trust, and just being more fair. So if someone's evil, you can freaking see it. And I think that's, there's fewer things better in the world for that.
Love that. And one more question before we pass it over to all of you guys to ask your questions is just, what's next for the graph? What are you most excited for this year and maybe even long term?
So when the decentralized network launched late 2020, for 2 years, only Ethereum was enabled. And that's because we weren't even, the technology wasn't even close to quality of service to centralized tech. And now it's killing it. And now in just less than 2 quarters, there are 6 more chains. There are 40 chains on the hosted service. And we get to help unblock 40 chains and all builders on that. And then think of how many chains are in the ecosystem. In the Graph Foundation is public now. Graph Foundation just said there could be a permissionless SDK level experience, graph improvement proposal, integration of chains, which means anyone that wants anything indexed can integrate with the graph, and that will unblock more people. So that is like, nothing can move forward if it's blocked. 7 chains are now unblocked just in the past couple quarters. That's amazing. But imagine if all 40 chains on the hosted service get over, and then imagine if everyone else who wants to be on there integrates over. And BD mine, I'm like, oh, that's a gift, because there are more people that can. Not only is it good because it helps us be successful in what we are doing in my mission right now, but it enables people to have truly decentralized, unblockable, unstoppable, unbeatable uptime technology, because up to now it's been blocked. So that's super exciting to me that I even get to like be part of it, and I came in before it, and now I get to see it and actually help people through it. And then just imagining what could happen in 5 to 10 years, and just to be like a tiny portion of it is so awesome. That's super exciting for me.
Amazing. Okay, with that, we will hand it over to you for questions. No comments, just questions, and let's make sure to keep them concise. Raise your hand if you have.
I want to put out there, you can ask Tegan questions too, and they can be very personal.
Kyle's in the hot seat. It's about you, Kyle.
Seriously, we should so if you ask something, we should both have to answer. And I don't mind personal questions, obviously. I'm very honest. So throw it out there. The scarier, the better.
Hey, can you guys hear me? Okay. Just what are your thoughts about the regulatory environment? I work in crypto, but it's just like that's been kind of the story of the year, one of the stories of the year. So like, what do you say to people who are concerned that the SEC and all the other quote unquote powers that be, like, they're bearing down? It kind of feels like this is the year where, I don't know, a lot of decisions are going to be made. So I don't know. Do you like have positive words of reinforcement for people who are nervous?
You go first, I'll go second.
Okay.
So first they laugh at you, or no, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. We're at the fight stage. I think it's pretty sad to see what's happening in the US. They're really stifling innovation. I have a lot of friends that have left the US. They've taken their companies, they've left. A lot of friends that are considering it. So hopefully we can have a little bit more clarity and keep innovation here in San Francisco, in the US. That's what I would like to see.
And in my opinion, I don't care, because all we're gonna do is like keep building something. Whether it's in Lisbon, I don't care if I have to freaking move to Singapore. My wife might, but like I don't care what I need to do to keep doing this. I will do it. Everyone else be damned. The mission is too important. We can't stop, and we will be heads down. And whether we have to do it on a different continent or here, which I'd rather stay here with my wife, my kids, and family. So I don't care. And regulators going to regulate. So there's nothing we can really do about that. That's their job. That's their incentive, and they're going to do it. But whatever. Sorry for not being non-committal.
You two seem pretty bullish on the San Francisco economy, and I was wondering where your thoughts on where that might lead in terms of the tech economy in San Francisco and the broader economy over the next, say, 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think San Francisco will never die. There's a spirit here and a heart here that will live forever. And, I moved here from New York City, and I hated it, frankly, for the first 6 months. Like, it's so effing weird here. And then I did some introspection work, and I learned about, your ego and all of that. And I think that San Francisco is just a really incredible place. And in New York, you can't talk about your crazy startup idea at dinner. They're like, stop talking. Here, everyone's like, how can we help? What can we do? Do you need funding? And it's just a different energy, and it's a really special energy. So yeah, I mean, we opened this space during the height of COVID, a pandemic, when everyone said San Francisco was dead, and here, look at us. Like, it's pretty special.
And I'm bullish on the world in general. I'm bullish on and humans, but I'm bullish any place where people get together and poke holes in ideas and use that to build more. So that's happening all over South America. It's happening in Africa, all over Europe, obviously, tons in India. I mean, all over the world. And there are a few places as special as San Francisco where you have a place like this, where we're just getting up, shooting the shit, and like brilliant people are coming in. And just the conversations I heard tonight, like, make me bullish on humanity. So there are a few places as special as San Francisco in the States that can do that, because in different places, you might have very well-off people. They might be doing investing, or they might be doing all this, but there are a few places that concentrate on ideas, poking holes, and then innovating on those ideas as much as San Francisco. So I'm bullish on San Francisco, but I'm bullish on the world.
Oh, I just wanted to piggyback on what you were saying earlier about regulation and, I don't know, is it working?
I bet hearing
Is
I've
that
worked on
better?
jets a long time.
Yeah, because I feel like it's really about systems change, right? This is a bigger thing. So, whether, we end up changing here or regulating more here, what you said about not caring, this is a bigger thing. This is a systems change. This is the world changing, the way that governments work, the way that all of it works, really. And so I feel like that's what I wanted to piggyback on saying, is just commenting on that. Like, decentralization is really about how everything works and not just the technology itself, right? It's a really big cultural and systems change. And so we may all move to other places, or things like the hub centers that we're used to may really shift, right? And
It's a paradigm shift,
yeah,
for
it's
sure.
a paradigm shift. So this one.
Yeah, and
It's more of a comment, not a question.
yeah, no, I agree. And so it's disruption, and I love disruption. Obviously, I've disrupted my life multiple times, been super uncomfortable, and I became more anti-fragile because of it. Like, I love disruption in anything, anti-fragility. And not to name any names of countries, but anyone who prevents disruption is going to get left behind. Just like Web3, if people don't pay attention to Web3, they don't at least learn about it, they don't get involved potentially, they're going to be disrupted, which I like. Like, if you're not disrupting yourself, you are literally decaying. And that's what some people, whether they're in regulatory positions or not, are doing. And there are going to be some really bad outcomes for that. Imagine if Web3 technology is all built outside of any given country, and especially a country that's been in power for a long time, and the hegemony falls apart. It'll be them shooting themselves in the foot, more like shooting themselves in the femur, because it's going to hurt. Yeah, for those watching online, she talked about the why and the distribution of opportunity, essentially. And even though I grew up the way I did in America, I was so much better off than the majority of the people in the world. I got lucky, a lottery ticket to be born in America, in whatever state, because people around the world, my wife's from Colombia, people do not freaking live like this in Colombia, most. Even the very wealthy people don't even live as close to probably many of us do in just even a small home here. And then you think of like rural Africa. Think of what opportunities they have. And now they can literally just connect to the internet, which the majority of the world can, and they can participate. They're not gate kept. And that's that's part of our mission. That's freaking cool. To even think that maybe one day we could have a small part in distributing opportunity, which leads to innovation, because more brains that have eventually maybe more capital or more knowledge, and be able to, because the more brains working on something, the more powerful it is. Like, that's part of our mission too. That's my mission. That's awesome to say. So I totally agree with you. And that's what we're all working on. And if you're not, I feel bad for you, because you should be. And I totally mean that. That
Forceful red pilling going on.
Yeah, that
here.
might have been funny, but I mean it.
Yo. And a hugger. Okay, so the other day there was a whole conversation about AI and Web3 and truth, right? So Web3 is really awesome for establishing truth. AI is amazing to speed it up, but then we have trouble with deep fake and truth, and you don't really know what's truth. But then Web3 could give us the truth and the combination. Oh my God. So how do we not create Big Brother? And I know that's maybe not about careers, but
You want to take it or me? Right now, ChatGPT is junk in, junk out. There is so much shit on the internet. You don't know what's true. What if ChatGPT were powered by auditable information, verified by consensus, and audited every block? That's what Sam's working on right behind you. So if you want to know about machine reinforcement learning, imagine if you could have ChatGPT based on consensus verified information, which is one of the biggest, most cool things about blockchain information. It's verified and auditable, 365, every block, new information. And if you're incorrect, then you're thrown out, and there are disincentives for that. So imagine when ChatGPT can only gather information that is verifiable and correct. Think of the outcome. I'll use that. I might want to, if I want to make a really good insult or make, something, whatever, I'll pull from all the junk. But we've all sifted through the internet and the crap that's on there. Think how much crap is on there versus what's really good. So that's the power of the graph. Because the graph already indexes much of the world's Web3 data, but imagine if it indexes everything, and it truly, this is one thing that is built on it, but it is the truth layer that makes it readable, so you can build a, let's call it truth GPT, right? I like that. Sam, you're welcome. But think of that, junk in, junk out. So maybe I misunderstood the question.
Aren't we living it though, right? It's very Orwellian today already.
Hold on. So can you elaborate on what you mean by Big Brother? Because I thought you were talking about them being able to change information.
Okay, so we got the juxtaposition. We got two dichotomies happening in our world. One is this awesomeness about being anonymous, and then with that comes people hacking, people cheating, all kinds of negative stuff. Similarly, on the flip side, you have truth, you have all this amazing stuff, and then you have, okay, how do we not create the social credit system where every activity of every person, right? Like we're doing a project around sustainability, and there's an aspect of identity. We need to know people. And then you have okay, it's just, there's so many juxtaposed things that make my brain go boing, boing.
What? Say it again.
Boing, boing.
I've got a thought on this, if you want to go. So that's what the blockchain ecosystem enables us to do, to pull levers openly and let other people call those levers into question, which is the scientific method, which is just the best way to create something. And imagine, let's say reputation, for instance. It's just one example. I mean, we could be going away from potentially one token, one vote, maybe even one person, one vote. And in public, via code, right? Obviously, there's human bias in code, but it's auditable. So I think enough people working on it will eventually come to the best decision. And if not, then people will call it into question. But you can imagine if you could factor in reputation, integrity, honesty, consistency, persistence, and everything that you wanted to throw in there, all these different levers. That is just one example how blockchain technology enables us to create a system that will be better and will be auditable, and therefore isn't a black box that you have to trust, and therefore I think we'll come to a better outcome in general. So how do we prevent Big Brother? Get freaking involved and participate in the technology, get on the forums, give your thoughts, because if you don't and it ends up being bad, that's your fault. If you're not building something that could help that and you're worried about it, that's your fault. And that's, endless possibilities of what we can actually do with this stuff. And that's only possible with open source and really decentralized, and therefore decentralized control. And that's we can actually do that now. Somebody just hasn't built it yet, but I know somebody will. Yeah. And people are probably already working on it.
And at its core, it's about self-sovereignty, right? And you get to control your identity. You can be different people all day, every day. And I think that that's power. And then also what's happening in the privacy sector on zero knowledge, I think is very promising. But yeah, we don't want everything to be public and trackable. Absolutely not. And I think, privacy is a human right. So with that, we'll do one final question. And then, yeah, we'll network a little bit.
Now, there's thousands of cryptos and dozens of protocols. When will we start seeing an implosion of the weak players, right? Are you anticipating anytime soon, or will that take a while, or it's too hard to predict?
Of what players? Sorry.
There's thousands of cryptos and so many protocols, right? Like in the auto industry 100 years ago, after Henry Ford built a car, there were 3,000. Today, there's like 6 parent companies, right? In the crypto world, there's just so many different cryptos and so many different protocols. Will we start seeing an
The
implosion?
consolidation. So you're asking about the consolidation of the crypto industry?
Yes.
Like the top players emerging? Yeah. I think, if you pay close attention, that's already starting to happen, and I think that a lot of the, there was at one time, launching a layer 1 was very much about a money grab. VCs were super about it. And then they spent a lot of money to try to bootstrap and build these ecosystems. But if you look today, Ethereum and the layer 2s are really where a lot of the development is happening. And so I think we're already starting to see that. And also, if you go to edgeandnode.com, you can see our Web3 stack blog, and that has a lot of the core players within the infrastructure layer. I would say the Graph's in there, Arweave's in there, IPFS is in there as well. So I would say it's starting to happen. And then at the dApp layer, there are a handful of dApps that are really used. And I think that, as this infrastructure comes together, decentralized infrastructure, removing all central points of failure, that's really when the dApp layer will really explode.
And I'll take a slightly different approach and 2 points on it. One is, whenever I participate in anything, I'm never really good at predicting like when or whatever, but I am good at predicting like if. Most things will die, and that's a good thing. And new things will be born, and that's an even better thing. It's when things stop happening that should die, because the more experiments that happen, the more likely you're going to come to at least for the time, the perfect solution. So just because, there's a lot of shit out there, but there's also cool people, like really values-oriented people that are building something that just will end up dying. Their companies might not survive. I keep saying dying, but yeah, no, but I think that's such a good thing. Experimentation is awesome because it increases the likelihood of disruption, which increases the likelihood of innovation, and then therefore increases the pace of innovation. So I want that. And I love people that put it all out there, even if they have a severe, very high likelihood of failure, but they still do it. That's freaking cool. I respect any person that has ever done that.